Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Triangle SciTech Expo with the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. My name is Nancy, and I will be your host for this program. And with me is Megan Pendle, and she will be talking about apex sustainability, the peak of good living. And she's really thrilled to welcome you to her presentation. Megan is the first sustainability coordinator for the town of Apex, and she is building the Apex sustainability program from the ground up. With support of sustainability analyst Valerie Mera and future interns. So Megan grew up in Apex, so she knows the town well. And she graduated from NC State University with a bachelor's in environmental sciences, a minor in applied ecology, focal area in climate change and water resources, and global perspectives certificate. She also applies her experience with climate grassroots leaderships and scientific research in South Africa. So we are really excited to talk to her. But before we do that, because we do have some viewers in Zoom and on YouTube, I would like to give you a quick Zoom tutorial just to give you the perfect viewing experience. If you are in YouTube, you don't have to worry about that. It will be taken care of for you. But so if you are in Zoom or in YouTube, closed captioning will be available. But for Zoom, you need to actually click that little closed caption button at the bottom, and then you select Show Subtitles. Now, if you are in gallery view, all those boxes, the guest boxes and the speakers boxes might obscure your presentation. So what we recommend is that you actually click on the speaker view, and then you click on view options and go all the way down to side-by-side mode. That brings your speaker box next to your slideshow. And you can actually make that speaker box either smaller or bigger by sliding that slide bar either to the left or to the right. And then last but not least, we do want to hear from you. So we do have chat options available in YouTube and in Zoom. But in Zoom, you have to click on the chat box, and then you can put all your questions for Megan in there. If you have some comments, please put it in there as well. We just want to make sure that they are on topic and respectful, just be good digital citizens, as you guys are always are. And just to practice our chat skills, Megan has a really cool little game that we are going to play. And it's two truths and a lie. So I'm going to let Megan do that with us. Hello, Megan. How are you doing?
Welcome, everyone. Happy Earth Day. I am like the tooth fairy at the dentist today. I mean, this is the day of all days right here. So really thrilled to welcome you all to this presentation. Excited to be with you. I'm hoping to make this a little into a piglet. So again, those three things are: I am completely vegan. I was named two completely separate names at birth, and I have babysat a piglet. So in the chat box, to be most efficient, I recommend you can put the keywords vegan, names, or piglet, and that will identify your vote on which one you think is the fib.
So we have one answer already. So somebody says that she thinks the two names at birth is a fib.
Okay. So that's not going to give anything away here yet. Allow people to have a little time to answer and come on into the presentation.
I would love maybe, yeah, I would love to that the piglet is actually true, but but looks like somebody says piglet is a fib.
That's right.
So, but I was hoping that would be true. Oh, and everybody else is guessing that you're not a vegan.
Okay, good.
So that's
Okay, for anybody who's just coming in, I'm going to say the three statements one more time. It's two truths and a fib. The first statement is that I'm completely vegan. I was named two completely separate names at birth, and I have babysat a piglet. So go ahead and chat which one you think is the fib.
Hugo says piglet.
Okay.
I want that to be true though. But
All right. What do you say? Give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
I guess we can. Yes.
All right. Okay, drum roll, please. Here are the results. I did, in fact, babysit a piglet once. I volunteered on a farm and they had to go out of town for a few days. And so I got to bring the piglet home and babysit it for 3 days. And it became great friends with my dog. So it was a fun experience. Nancy, you'll be happy to hear that one's true. I was named two completely separate names at birth. I am, my mother is Jewish. And so I was named Megan Elizabeth, my English name. And for my Hebrew name, my name is Ephrona Malka. So those are two completely separate names. And you can call me either, but today I'll go by Megan. And then the fib, a lot of the YouTubers are guessing correctly. I am not completely vegan. That is true. I am vegan whenever possible, but not completely. So I think that, you know, I respect those who are completely vegan. I think it's great. And so I'm vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, whenever possible. So kind of go with the flow and think sustainably and zero waste. So thank you all for playing that with me. We are going to go ahead and get started. And with that, I'm going to please share my screen for the first little bit here. Okay. Hi, again, my name is Megan, and as Nancy kindly introduced, I am the sustainability coordinator for the town of Apex. And I want to give you a little bit about the game plan today. So during this hour, again, thank you for joining me. I'm going to start out with a story about a human, story about a girl, have some story time there. And then we're going to take a peek into the peak of good living. As Nancy also mentioned, I am working in the town of Apex as a sustainability coordinator, and Apex is the peak of good living. That is their slogan, which I think is great also for sustainability, very reflective of that concept. And then we'll go through some sustainability and systems thinking and mostly think about, okay, how do we fit in that picture? What can we do every day? What actions can we take for sustainability? And then tag you're it will be up for your questions, and I'll be excited to hear from you and your comments and ideas and questions, whatever it may be. Okay. So from there, I'm going to stop sharing to tell my story today. So the story about the girl, she grew up in the town of Apex, and she was still in this generation when she knew it was time to come in for dinner when the street lights came on, right? So she was playing outside, very curious, turning up logs and splashing in the stream with her brother, always outside, outdoors, and very inquisitive, a vast love for nature growing up. And after she graduated from Apex High School, this girl went to Wake Tech Community College, and she went there thinking she was going to start psychology. And during this time, it was a huge STEM movement, right? And at that time, we were actually getting into STEAM. And in this movement, it was all about women in STEM. And this girl had a lot of women around her, and they were all empowered and energized to get into STEM and STEAM topics and career paths, specifically engineering. And so this girl thought, well, you know what? I could do that too. I could be an engineer. And so she went to NC State University and got in with the environmental science program, planning on going the engineering path, right? So she, right before the first semester, she goes into the dean's office and she says, look, I want to transfer to an engineering degree. So what can I do? What classes can I take this first semester so that I can get there and I can go on that path and transfer? So she took the engineering 101 classes and very quickly realized that, even though engineering is a very valuable topic and career path, it just wasn't for her. She needed that flexibility and that creativity in the science realm. And so she stuck with the environmental sciences path. And so she started working in labs at NC State, at the EPA, even at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And with this path, the amazing thing about the NC State Environmental Sciences program is that they carve out these course hours for you to take and deem this focal area. And this focal area could be anything. It could be math related, it could be a language, as long as you relate it back to the environmental sciences degree. And so this girl was very passionate about nature, interested in sustainability and climate. And so she sort of formed her own focal area and made it up. She called it Climate Change and Water Resources. And with that, she had the opportunity to go on a study abroad program to South Africa. And this was, of course, a life-changing experience, this study abroad program. And she spent the summer there in South Africa. And they did what she was used to, that hard science research, searching for water quality answers in South Africa in the rural areas. The other cool thing about this program is they didn't just do the hard science research, they also incorporated soft science approaches. And this brought them above Kruger National Park to a rural village called Hamakuya. And they got the opportunity to do a homestay there for 3 days. And in that homestay, they were tasked with surveying the local people about their ideas of water quality. And of course, during that homestay, when this girl walked up to the village and the house that she would be staying at, the house mother, Rendani, ran up to them with open arms. First thing, said, "Come, I'm your mother now." So welcoming. And they became very fast friends. So during these days, she would help Rendani cook and gather food and clean. But most of all, she followed Rendani around and just asked her a bunch of questions. And so by the ceremony of the first night, Rendani looked at this girl and said, "I am blessing you with a name, Kumbelo." Kumbelo means the one who asks questions. So now by the third day, we're leaving later that day, these girls, and she wakes up off the mud hut floor and goes find Rendani. She's standing by the water pump. And then she finally asks the question. She says, "Rendani, what do you think about climate change?" Her face fell. She took a breath and finally she said, "Well, when you talk about climate change, the only thing we can do is cry and pray that it won't affect us." So fast forward to the next semester in the fall, this girl takes her first steps back onto campus after the study abroad trip and looks around her, takes it in. And those words of Rendani are echoing through her mind. And she says, of course she feels hopeless. She's worried and focused about getting clean water every day for her and her children and her village. Here I am, and I have access to water, access to food, readily available. And also these rich resources right at my fingertips. And so even though she knew that work in the lab was important, she felt inspired and energized to do more work in the moment, right? Something that's more tangible, action oriented. And so she joined the Climate Reality Project. Climate Reality Project is this international renowned organization, and they have individual campus cores around the world. And so the Climate Reality Campus Core at NC State is what this girl joined and very quickly fell in love with it. She became the grassroots leader for the group and taught other students how to campaign. So she was in that brickyard at NC State almost every day, petitioning and speaking to teachers and guests and students about climate and about committing to 100% clean energy for the campus. So fast forward again to graduation. And for some reason, this girl thinks, all right, I'm going to get out of college, and right away, there's going to be a job lined up. You know, everything has just flowed exactly the right way so far. It's going to continue happening, right? And she did. She had a job right out of college, right after graduation, with a campaigning organization. And just coincidentally, this position was located at NC State. And so she began teaching students that very next semester how to campaign, how to run campaigns, which included some environmental campaigns. Well, she found out this work was not exactly sustainable for her in the long term. So she, by the end of that semester, was out of a job and was jobless for 3 months, which might not sound like a lot of time, but that's a scary, challenging time. And so she's looking for all of these other positions and applying for many different jobs across the board, but nothing's really standing out to her that screams to her passion, right? Eventually, 3 months later, she stumbles along this job posting for Town of Apex Parks and Recreation. She thought, well, you know what? I might as well boomerang back to my hometown, which I love, and get paid to work outside, right? While she figures out her career path. And that's exactly what she did. And she worked as a park attendant in the town of Apex. About 6 months go by. And she's in one of the parks, and all of a sudden this electric vehicle pulls up into the parking lot. Well, this electric vehicle had a Town of Apex emblem on the side. So she geeks out and runs up to the electric vehicle and starts talking to the driver and picking his brain about, you know, where this vehicle came from and the commitments from the Town of Apex. Well, he connects her to his supervisor, and she takes his supervisor out to coffee and picks his brain about electric vehicle program and Town of Apex sustainability initiatives. Well, and of course, that conversation led to another connection and then another. And after many hours of conversations over lunch breaks and after work, she ended up across the table having coffee with the Apex town manager. Very friendly guy. And he listened to what this girl had to say and her ideas about sustainability in Apex. And at the end, he said, you know what? I think it would be a great idea to have somebody here as a position working on these sustainability initiatives and focused on sustainability in Apex. And with his blessing, this girl started talking to people all around the state and the region who do sustainability work, who are sustainability officials in municipalities like towns and cities and counties. And she picked their brains, and from their mentorship and insight, she built a proposal and then presented it in the summer of 2019 to the town manager and said, look, here are all the reasons why this makes sense and we need a sustainability position. Well, they loved the idea, but needed a little bit more. And so they asked this girl to create a report about details like budget and job description. And so she did, and she sent it in. And then months go by with no word. And finally, the next budget season rolls around and the position is posted for the town of Apex. Now it's time for the real work. This girl spent hours and hours preparing for the 4-step interview process and finally earned the position. Now, as you can probably tell, this person in the story, this girl, just happened to be me. But it could just have easily been about you. It could be a story about how you grow to solve problems you care about, or how you choose your extracurriculars next college semester, or how you use your current career as a tool to contribute to our sustainability movement. It could be a story that gets passed down to great-grandchildren one day as they learn about what we did now in this transitional and critical time to seize their future. Now, thank you for listening to my story. I will now share my screen again because I would like to move and continue the story and talk about Apex, the peak of good living. Apex, the peak of good living. Here are some goals and action items that we're working on. Actually, in 2019, the town of Apex set some pretty ambitious goals. The first being 80% clean energy by 2035 for town operations. And that would be a stepping stone to a larger goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. And in that goal, it includes 100% clean municipal vehicle fleet by 2050. In addition, the beginning of 2020, the Environmental Advisory Board was formed, and they are a force of nature working on some wonderful environmental initiatives that help inform the staff and town council on how to move forward. This is a completely community-run initiative. And then secondly, the sustainability program was born when we were brought on board. So it's me, the sustainability coordinator, and Valeria Mera, the sustainability analyst. And together, we set 3 goals for this first year of creating the program. The first being creating the Apex Sustainability Action Plan, or ASAP. Second, creating a baseline greenhouse gas inventory from our current utility and fleet emissions. And then third, community outreach and education. Now, that's been a little challenging this year, but we're making it work. And we have a lot of ideas for the future. Now, this is all very important, but Apex has already set aside many plans and thought into the future about these topics. But we in the sustainability program want to hone in on all of the sustainability topics because our population is rapidly growing. When I first moved to Apex in 1999, it was a small town with gravel roads and horse farms. And very quickly, it grew into this beautiful, thriving town, which is so exciting. But we want to be mindful about how we're growing. And right now, the growth rate is looking at about 14.35 residents per day, which is like 14 adults and a baby, right? It's a lot of people every day. So we are breaking down the sustainability or peak of good living into 8 main initiatives. The first is clean fleet and transportation, conservation and efficiency, green infrastructure, economics, clean energy, waste management, resiliency, and community outreach. And now, key thing here that I'd like to point out is the difference between sustainability and resiliency. Both are equally important, but I see sustainability being the umbrella with the resiliency underneath. So sustainability is a mitigation strategy, right? Making sure that the problems don't happen in the first place. Resiliency is adapting to problems that already exist. Both very important in this critical time. Okay, now that we've talked a little bit about Apex, I'd love to share with you the systems perspective. We're thinking big picture here. Anytime we talk about sustainability, we have to think in systems, right? I can take a pretty educated guess right now and say that everybody watching here today or in the future, you're probably not directly involved in cutting down our rainforests or taking millions of pounds of fish out of the ocean, right? Well, we do need to think about how we feed into those systems. What part do we play into those systems? So first, let's talk about systems, okay? Here's one that I do every day. So sometimes I don't always eat healthy, but when I do, it makes me feel energized and ready to go outside and exercise. So the more I eat clean, the more I want to exercise. Now, at the same time, the more I exercise, the more good food that I want to eat. And the cycle continues and feeds into each other. This is one of my favorite systems to talk about. Have you ever been with a group of friends and one of you starts laughing about something and it gets the other person laughing? And then the more your friend laughs, the more you laugh. And then the more you laugh, the more your friend laughs. And then it's just an endless giggle fest, right? It feeds into each other. Also, we're talking about STEAM. We have to think about art here. And when we do art, whether it be for ourselves or for others, it gives us this sense of fulfillment. And so the more that we feel fulfilled and we share our art, the more we want to do art. Again, the more we want to do art and create, the more we want to share it. And the cycle continues. Science. So we all know the scientific method. And we know that, okay, if I have an idea, I'm going to make a hypothesis. And then from my hypothesis, I'm going to run an experiment. And then I'm going to get results. And then based off those results, I could have another idea and then a new hypothesis and another experiment and more results. And the cycle goes on. The carbon cycle. Now, carbon seems to be the naughty word in this space, right? Which is understandable. But really, we love carbon. Carbon makes up the world. We're in physical form because of carbon. We are made up of carbon. And the problem enters when this delicate system that nature has created, if we feed too much into one part of the system, for example, down at the bottom left, burning fossil fuels, right? We are putting the system out of balance because we're putting too much into one part of the system. System goes out of balance, and that's when we see too much carbon in our atmosphere. Recycling, right? So there's this big recycling process. I buy a plastic water bottle, I drink out of it, I put it in the recycling bin, it gets processed, and then a company buys it up and makes their plastic water bottles out of that recycled plastic, and then I buy that bottle again. Now, the thing is, this process takes a lot of energy, right? So even though putting that bottle into the recycling bin is better than putting it into the landfill, the truth is some of these bottles still make it to the ocean, and it takes energy. So that brings me to reduce, reuse, recycle. Now let me let you in on a little secret here. Reduce, reuse, recycle, we're not just talking the 3 arrows in one full system, right? It's actually said in order. So the first thing we want to do is reduce. Instead of using a plastic water bottle, use a reusable water bottle and don't buy that plastic in the first place. The second is reuse. So either reuse that product again for the same purpose, or one of my favorite topics, upcycling, which is using that product for a different purpose without changing its form. And then thirdly, last resort, recycle. Again, it's better than throwing it in the landfill, right? Reduce, reuse, then recycle. All right, now that we are talking about systems, I'd also like to bring in really the big picture system of sustainability. A lot of us think sustainability, keywords, earth, nature, environment, right? Well, it's more than that. The big picture is we have to fit in our whole community because we are not apart from nature. We are with nature. We need to start making strategies and processes that fit into that with nature concept. So in the sustainability community, we call this the triple bottom line: environment, economy, society, or the 3 Ps, easy to remember. Ready? People, profit, planet. Say it with me. People, profit, and planet. That is sustainability, the whole picture. All right, now on to one of my favorite topics. This is probably my biggest nerd subject, biomimicry, learning from nature's wisdom. Biomimicry basically means emulating or copying nature's wisdom or its strategies, its processes, its structures, and applying it to our processes and structures. So again, we're working not against nature, not even for nature, but with nature. So there are 9 principles to biomimicry, and we're going to run on through these because I think it's really important as we think about how we're strategizing for sustainability in the future and in that systems thinking, right? So the first principle, nature runs on sunlight. So nature, of course, you know, I could have easily put a leaf here for photosynthesis. We know that the leaves are fed by sunlight, but I had to put one of my favorite creatures here, the oriental wasp, which absorbs solar energy. This is an animal, absorbs solar energy and creates electricity from it. And then on the flip side, you know, in the human world, we can emulate this idea of taking energy that's already readily available and free to use by implementing solar PVs and rooftop solar. Runs on sunlight. Nature also utilizes only the energy it needs. Have you ever been to the ocean and seen some pelicans or seagulls and they've swooped down towards the ocean and they're right there on the surface, right? But they're just gliding. How do they do that? Well, they could easily fly over the ocean and flap their wings and use that energy, but instead they ride the currents of the air. The air pressure is actually lower towards the water surface. And so they use that to their advantage so that they can glide and save energy. And we can do the same in many different ways. And one of those ways is by capturing rainwater, right? Water that's already readily available, and using that water to water a garden, for example. Nature also fits form to function. So we've seen the anteaters' long noses just for sucking up those ants. Another great creature is the kingfisher. That's the bird here shown. And the kingfisher has this really interesting long beak that's designed to reduce air resistance when it's flying, so it can go faster and more silently. And we actually modeled this train on the right. This is a bullet train in Japan, where we modeled this long nose and this shape from the kingfisher. And it allows this train to travel faster, quieter, and with less energy. Nature recycles everything. Nothing goes to waste in nature. This on the left here is called a nurse log. So if you can see, there's this big tree trunk that's laid out on the ground that fell. And so this is a decaying tree. Well, another tree is growing from the nutrients of this tree. We have to think about our recycling process, not only recycling, but our waste management in general. Are we really using the right strategies? Or are we dumping everything and dumping it into the trash can, and then we don't see where it goes and it ends up who knows where? Okay. Nature also rewards cooperation. You know, we see the beehive effect and how all of those bees work together tirelessly to make their honey in their homes. And similarly, we have places like farmers market where we cooperate and we have farmers who grow the food, and then we buy the food to eat good, healthy food and eat locally as well. And we do get this food from the bees. So that's a good thing to note right there. Nature banks on diversity. We need to value diversity in the human culture, right? We've seen that especially this last year. It's imperative and it's beautiful. And we see the same thing in nature. You know, if you see a monocrop, a field of just pine trees, it's hard to get a lot of diversity there as far as nutrients and wildlife and biodiversity in general. So these rainforests are really key and a great example of diversity and how that helps living things thrive. Nature demands local expertise. So we know, we've walked through the forest and we've all seen the mushrooms growing nearby the trees. Well, what we don't see is this network, this communication network called mycelium underneath the earth. And this mycelium network can travel miles down beneath the forest floor, and it helps living things, even plants, communicate. In addition, we need places like the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences had to do it, right? This is an amazing resource right here locally in the Triangle region that demands this local expertise that we then can contribute to and visit. Nature curbs excess from within. And basically what this means is there is a tipping point in nature that triggers a change, and nature is able to adapt to that. It's resilient. And this comes to play when we see natural forest fires. And so natural forest fires happen when a lot of debris, the dry debris builds up, and then that fire happens, it burns out to a controllable measure, and then allows new growth to regenerate. Now, I have to question this when I look at cities like this one on the right, where we talk about heat island effect, and there's nothing that can cool the city down. What is that tipping point? And lastly, nature taps the power of limits. The tardigrade, I gotta say, is probably my favorite animal. It's a microscopic creature called an extremophile, which basically means that it taps the power of limits. It can survive in space, in very cold and very hot environments. It can survive in high pressure environments. It's basically a little superhero. So we find these extremophiles in nature. Well, we do that as humans too. I watched the Free Solo movie a few weeks ago, and it's just amazing what we humans can do. And I think that we need to think about this as we're joining together and creating solutions for sustainability, that we can do this. And that brings me to how we can do this. The 4 levels of action. This is inspiration by Will Grant, who is an inspiring figure in the grassroots community, in the activism community. And I'd love to share them with you today. 4 levels of action. The first level is individual action. So individual action leads to a lifestyle change, right? So I am going to recycle. I'm going to try to drive less and bike more to my destinations. The second tier is that close circle, your pod, your family, those that you hung out with during the COVID. It's with those direct connections like friends and family. And this sparks a values change, right? So I can go and convince my family to recycle more, or turn off the lights when they leave the room, or even install solar panels on their homes. Thirdly, the third level, community and local institutions. So this is where community change happens, changing action in schools, in your workplace, in organizing within your town communities and industries. This is when the level is at the institution, at that place in the groups, but you're still known as an individual. And then lastly, the 4th level is that economy, policy, and law change, the whole system change, all that we've been talking about, right? And this is when then congressmen, you reach out to your congressperson and you inspire them and ask them to make changes, or you boycott certain products, right? So we are talking about systems change here, and that's the solution to sustainability. However, that big picture systems change, that's the top-down approach. The bottom-up approach, that grassroots level, that's when you start with the individual change, the lifestyle change. And so you have the top-down strategy, you have the top-down, the bottom-up. And what Will Grant is arguing is that we need a middle out approach, starting in the middle and then working our way out. Most common systems of change and activism are either individual or at that economy, policy, and law level, at government level. And so, we want to approach this from middle out so that we can influence true change now, right? That bigger systems change. It takes a while. It's important, and we need to do it, but it takes time. Middle out allows us to influence true change now. And through this, we want to set models for change, right? What Grant says is that we're going to have to change everything, including, every part of this system. And it's going to be a lot of work, but I think we can do it if we work together. The local community has to set the example. This is a dire situation, but it doesn't have to look like a punishment for being irresponsible in these last decades. The human brain is wired not to respond to change. We don't like change. And so we need to make change good and desirable and cultivate creativity and togetherness, right? And implement those 9 levels of biomimicry, of ways that we learn from nature. That's how we're sustainable. Nature has been going through the research and development process for 3.8 billion years. I think it's figured something out by now, and I think we can learn from it. So what can you do specifically? This level 3 community and local places, community change, values change. We have to create a bridge. This in Apex looks like the Environmental Advisory Board between the government and the community, the Tree Citizens Advisory Board. We also have a Bee City Committee. Create a climate coalitions group in your community, 100% community run. Contact your favorite businesses. Go to schools. Go to your farmers market. In Apex, we have this big annual event called Peak Fest. So show up at those community events. In your neighborhood, inspire tree planting events or education about solar or a community garden. Have an event where you walk to your favorite coffee shop and with your neighborhood, and then you could even raise money for your favorite climate solution. There's so many ways to do this. And I think where I'll leave us is, again, the most important part of this is who is at the table. Look around when you're forming these community groups, when you're speaking to these institutions. Who is not there? Everyone, we need a representative, a voice, the seat at the table, every demographic, and every perspective and background. So make sure you reach out to your neighbors' neighbors, marginalized communities. Make sure that there's racial diversity and religious backgrounds there at the table, age groups. Even invite your local sustainability coordinator to the table. But the moral of the story is that middle out approach, getting involved with your local community, learning from nature, that is the solution to sustainability. And we can do that starting today. So I hope that this inspired you, not only inspired you, but inspired you to take action, not just for Earth Day, but every day. So thank you so much for showing up. And I appreciate all of you for listening. And I think this quote really sets it apart. Individual actions count. What we do together counts more. Thank you.
That was a wonderful, very inspiring presentation. Thank you so much, Megan. It's really interesting how you talk about the 3 Ps, the people, the profit, and the planet. And oftentimes it's reduced to the 2 Ps, right? Like just the people and the profit. And just with Earth Day, I think it's really important that we think about our planet, because we only have one. So and the fact that we are maybe at a tipping point, right? Nature is giving us signs. So I think what you are trying to reach, to do in Apex is just amazing. And we do have a couple of questions actually.
Great.
When you were talking about what your plans were for Apex, Apex is growing so quickly. And so one of the questions was like, is there any way that you have a proposal to actually save some of those green spaces, in the plan? Is that like part of the whole? And can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of our main initiatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is that green infrastructure. And this is also a huge interest of our current town council. So we are working right now on a tree canopy goal, to set a goal for a tree canopy and what that should look like. We also have the Environmental Advisory Board, and that committee, which is again community run committee, and they are there to see in part development processes. So they see applications for rezoning and developments, and they sit with them and offer recommendations for environmental benefit to go above and beyond our unified development ordinance and the requirements that they already have to speak to. And that includes very often tree canopy and green spaces. We're also planning on creating a community garden and a vertical green wall, a living wall. And we are revitalizing our downtown space now and starting those plans. And so that's a huge part of that. Everybody in Apex that I've talked to really values these green spaces. And especially, growing up in Apex and having seen more of those green spaces and those horse farms that have turned into apartment complexes, on one side, it's great to see the town thriving, but on the other side, we want to ensure that we are keeping those habitat corridors and connections together.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, one of the questions that I actually had was, when you were developing this, did you also consult with sustainability managers from like other towns? Like I'm thinking about, Cary, like, towns in Wake County, basically, or even in North Carolina.
Absolutely. So when I was building the proposal, I spoke with about 30 people, individuals around North Carolina and the Southeast region who are in similar positions, such as sustainability manager from Cary or sustainability or other sustainability coordinators, and asked them how their programs were going and what it took to build those programs and to be in that position. And then in addition, now that we have this program and I'm on board as the sustainability coordinator, we have joined numerous groups and have become members of organizations that really focus on this work. For example, the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network. We are a member of this organization, and it's a network of all of the sustainability officials around the Southeast region. And we get together and we have work groups and annual meetings and discuss these important topics.
Yeah, that's very good. And how does that trickle down then to actually, your citizens?
Absolutely. So, that's one of the key, one of the 3 goals that we've been working on this year, right? That we're focused on is community outreach.
Right.
And that's something that's very important for me, especially coming from the Apex community, coming from that grassroots background, making sure that they're in the know and have opportunity to be involved. Right. And in one of these ways, actually, coincidentally, earlier this week, I sent an invitation out to some community members. And so just backing up for a second, especially during COVID, it's hard to connect with the community. It's challenging, right? You have to have more creative solutions in connecting to people. And so one thing that I noticed is that there wasn't really a group in Apex, any community group, so point source that I could say really focuses on environment or any of these sustainability topics. But I kept talking to people who were Apex residents or stakeholders that were invested in environmental topics or interested or had careers as it is its foundation. And so I quote unquote collected these people and finally sent out this invitation to them all earlier this week and invited them to a conversation about possibly creating a community coalition. Apex Community Coalition, 100% community run. And that's not to take the responsibility off of me. That's because I think there is such great value when groups are 100% community run. Again, that middle out approach, right? And so the sustainability team will have as much or as little involvement as this coalition decides. And they can work on one or many topics. It's really up to them. So I'm really excited to have that conversation and start talking about how the community can start these actions.
Right. And that it gives them also the opportunity to take ownership actually from, that's also very important if you can just kind of like get engaged in it and see what kind of changes can happen, if you participate and if you do something. I think that's very important.
That's a great word, ownership. It gives them that ownership over, what is happening in our town. I know our town council is very interested in involving the community. And so, we have public forums and things like that. And we'll have a public meeting for public comments for the ASAP, the Apex Sustainability Action Plan coming this year.
I like the acronym ASAP. It's like now. That's great. I really enjoyed, your presentation and talking to you. You're so inspiring, and I'm looking forward to a lot of initiatives that are going to come out of this. And I live in Raleigh, but I'm sure it will trickle down, or kind of like spread out. What's
right.
the most important thing, right?
Yeah, nature knows no boundaries, right? And we have to work together. Again, I can't stress this enough. The middle out approach it's not just Apex working for Apex, but it's Apex working for all the communities, right? And our neighbors. And so we do work together.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. We are almost at the end of our program, so I want to thank you, Megan, for doing this. This is was a great presentation. Thank you all for joining us today. I also want to thank our sponsors, the North Carolina Science Festival, and of course, Biogen Foundation. And we have all those wonderful friends of the museum members that always support us, and that kind of helps us to create these events just like this, which is so important, right? And so I also want to tell everybody that we do have a lot of other programs lined up, not only today. Today, there's going to be a lot of programs that are going to kind of like be geared towards, saving our planet. It's the Earth Day, but we also have more programs on Friday and on Saturday. So please join us. We are going to put the link in the chat so you can access our little, programs list. And also, if you want to see this again, or if you want to watch any of the other programs, we do have recorded all of these programs, so you can always watch that again as well. So with that, thank you so much, Megan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Y'all have a great and happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, everyone who put this on and also attended today. It's an honor to be here. Happy Earth Day.
Glad you could be with us. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye, guys.